Berlin Syndrome is a psychological thriller slash drama slash suspense film about a young Australian photographer named Claire who is fascinated by East German architecture from the communist era. While holidaying in Berlin, she meets Andy, a charismatic local man who is a high school English and physical education teacher, and there's an instant attraction between the two. Eventually they end up in bed together for what appears to be just a simple one-night stand, but it takes an unexpectedly sinister turn when Claire wakes up the following morning to discover that Andy has left for work and has locked her in his apartment. Considering it to be an easy mistake to make, of course, she requests a key from him. He gives her one, but the very next day she discovers that the key is absolutely useless, the word mine has been written on her shoulder, and her SIM card has been removed from her cell phone. Making matters worse, the windows are heavily reinforced, thus making it impossible to smash, and there are absolutely no neighbors in the vicinity to hear her screams. And it's when she realizes that Andy has absolutely no intention of ever letting her go. He is keeping her hostage and is wanting to keep her for himself forever. This is a film that takes the captor-captive story and really tries to inject a lot of humanity into it. There was another film I reviewed recently called Hounds of Love, and I said that one critic stated about that film that it made the mistake of trying to make us empathize and sympathize with some very vicious killers and psychopaths. And I said in that review that I respectfully disagree, because I think that film is much more about manipulation. It's much more about a very vicious and aggressive and bloodthirsty and aggressive person manipulating another person into committing similarly vicious and brutal and insane and heartless acts. But this film, on the other hand, is much more about empathy. It's much more about sympathy, because you see, in this film, it's much more about forcing another person into doing something against their own will. And it's not really about manipulation at all. And obviously the title of the film is a play on the famous Stockholm Syndrome situation slash scenario, in which victims of a hostage situation start to feel this sort of loyalty or psychological alliance towards their captors as a sort of like survival mechanism, survival strategy, if you will. And even though that's something incredibly irrational, it's something very inherent in human beings, and it's something that actually does, I think, take a lot of empathy and sympathy to be able to do. The film really goes out of its way to truly try to portray Andy as a human being, and I think for the most part it actually succeeds. I mean, we do actually get the opportunity to explore Andy's background and history. We do understand that he doesn't have the best relationship with his parents. His mother is completely out of the picture. She doesn't show up in the film at all. She's just mentioned, and the very first time his father shows up, it's actually quite late in the film. It's during a lecture his father is giving at the university, and it's about the GDR, the German Democratic Republic, which was the communist part of Germany, Eastern Germany between 49 and 90, like after the Second World War and until the fall of communism. And Andy is there as well, attending, and during one moment his father just says in front of everybody, "Here, that's my son and I, we argue a lot, we disagree a lot, we really don't see eye to eye on the whole GDR thing, because my son is of the opinion that it was a completely unjust system." And ideologically, these two men really seem to be on opposite sides, but nevertheless, we do see them afterwards during the evening having supper together, and he behaves very respectfully towards his father. He seems to genuinely care about him. He volunteers to wash dishes and small little nice gestures like that, but even that scene turns creepy eventually, because as he is mentioning to him and telling him enthusiastically that he has started dating a new young woman who is Claire, we see the simultaneous cross-cutting of him talking to his father and him dragging Claire by her hair on the floor of his apartment, Claire being all bruised up and stuff. So it's really like really gives a sense that this is a nice guy during certain situations and with certain people, but he's really not what he seems. But this sort of attitude eventually does start to surface more and more, and he does start giving himself away more and more. I mean, there's a character in the film who is a teacher. She is a woman, and she is the wife of another teacher, co-worker slash friend of Andy's at the school, and she seems to be very like overly friendly and very like touchy-feely towards Andy, but not anything like all that incredibly flirtatious. I mean, it's very like normal behavior by most standards, but Andy is just really doesn't know how to handle it. And there's a scene in which all of them are in the cafeteria, and this woman, she is drinking out of a mug, and Andy realizes that it's his mug, that she accidentally has mistaken that mug to be her mug, but it's actually his. And she's like, apologizing and says that, I'm sorry, excuse me, I'll just go in and wash it. And he is very like frantic and nervous, like, no, don't, just leave it there, I'll wash it. And She says, "Oh, don't be silly. I can wash it." And when she goes by him, she like touches his arm like this, And his reaction, he just like goes to the washer and really tries to wash it off, like very like germophobically. And there's another scene as well in which that repeats when they're at a party, all of them, and it's New Year's Eve, and the same thing happens. I'm going to go wash this dish. No, don't go. Come back partying. And she touches his arm again, and he reacts like he just explodes with anger and asks her, like, what does your husband say about this? What is his opinion about you throwing yourself into the arms of other men? And she is just like, what the fuck are you talking about, you fucking creepy man? So this is a guy who is incredibly unforgiving and just ruthless towards women, and there's this very like deep-seated misogyny to him, and it's probably because he suffers from some sort of abandonment issues, because he lacked a strong maternal figure in his life. The reason his mother doesn't show up in the film is because actually he chooses not to speak to her, because he blames her for leaving him and his father before the fall of the wall, having fled to West Berlin. So, this is like, he's feeling this sort of double betrayal. He has been simultaneously let down by his mother, and simultaneously been let down by the motherland, you know what I mean? And that's why he feels like a stronger connection to the paternal figure in his life, and much less of a one to the maternal figure. And he feels, because he is a sociopath, he feels that this gives him the right to dominate women. And there's actually another girl who he lusts after and he looks at like very lustfully during gym class, and she notices, and when she eventually confronts him with it, he is actually super aggressive and says that, "Oh no, I'm not lusting after you, and even if I am, it's your fault because you're always showing off and showing your ass and stuff like that." So, this is a guy who really like can't gravitate towards women at all. He can only gravitate towards them if he is dominating them. And during the course of the film, he starts taking these Polaroid pictures of Claire and these very like disturbing like bondage positions. It's eerie. So this is a guy who is really trying to live out this sort of love-hate revenge fantasy, and the sad thing is that he is exacting his revenge on this poor innocent girl who just happened to be at the wrong place at the wrong time, basically. And they clash as well. They're very like on the opposite sides of things, because like I said, he lacks a strong maternal figure, and she says that she has a very close connection to her mother, so she has this very strong maternal figure in her life, and she happens to be in Berlin because she wants to photograph like communist East German architecture, which she is fascinated by. He, on the other hand, obviously has a distaste for it, and the whole movie is about this. It's about him being very deeply rooted to this place and being traumatized by it and feeling this betrayal sort of, while she is a foreigner who only sees things as they are on the surface. The whole movie is really about that. I mean, we get to know him a lot, but we don't really get to know her all that much. The film even asks us to actually sympathize with Andy when his father eventually dies. He goes visiting him, he discovers that he is dead, and he spends like a week there or something like that in his house, just, being depressed and shit. And, I didn't sympathize with him, and I mean, this is a guy who is holding a woman hostage in his house, so fuck you. And that was the moment actually when the film started becoming incredibly boring, and it's a part, like many others, in which the film becomes incredibly artsy. There's a lot of slow motion, a lot of like very artful shots, and a lot of music and all that. And that's when the film, I really think, becomes less interesting, and the character of Andy during that sequence becomes less interesting. And that's when I started becoming more interested in Claire. Teresa Palmer is absolutely brilliant in the role, and she's really fun to watch, and she has a lot of stuff to do in the film. I mean, from the beginning, in which she is terrified and traumatized, going to being, like as during the course of the film, like days turn into weeks and weeks turn into months, and she is still like locked up in this apartment. She tries her best, like cope with her situation, and she starts going, like a little crazy, as everyone would, really trying to sort of like keep herself occupied and really like entertain herself somehow. And the codependency that really like emerges between the two is also very interesting. It's not the type of codependency I was expecting. It's different. Like when Andy is away for a week at his father's place, Claire almost freezes freezes to death and almost starves to death in the apartment. And when eventually he comes back, she is like so fucking relieved that he came back, and then she's like, oh my god, I thought you would never come back. So, you know, the codependency is not like what you would expect. These two don't fall in love. I mean, he is keeping her hostage because it's what he does, it's what he enjoys. He likes keeping young girls hostage, and she is dependent on him because, hey, if you're not here, I'm going to starve to death. So it's simple. I really don't believe that she actually truly falls in love with him at all. I mean, she does actually try to escape and tries anything and everything to escape every single chance she's got. So this is a film that definitely has good stuff in it. I definitely don't think it presents its ideas as cleverly as I would have wanted to, but unfortunately it's a 90-minute film that's actually decent, trapped inside a film that's almost 2 hours long, that's actually quite mediocre and even quite boring. This is a film that actually is boring, folks. I mean, the pacing is really, really bad, and they took a story that's essentially a thriller and wanted to turn it into an art house movie, but the thing is that the two really don't mash together very well. I mean, the thriller elements really undermine the artsy stuff, and the artsy elements really undermine the thriller aspects of the film, and it's quite a shame because there are a lot of good scenes that feel too drawn out, and the tension really feels like it loses its like power, or how should I say it, and that's quite a shame. I think the acting is definitely the best thing about it, and it saves the film, and it's what it's worth watching for. So yeah, that's my 2 cents. I really don't know what else to say about this. So my question to you guys would be, what are some of your favorite films about people being held hostage, people being held captive, stuff like that? I'm really curious to know about your answers. Don't forget to leave them down in the comment section below. Thanks for watching my review. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe so I can see you later with other reviews. And as always, folks, until I'll see you again, don't forget to stay cool, stay awesome, and goodbye.